Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. That said, let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, let me tell you this. There are things in life, you remember where you were when they happen. To our parents and our grandparents and whoever, maybe your great-grandparents, maybe you. I don't know how old all you guys and girls are. It was the moon landing, right? Everybody knows where they were when the moon landing, all this good stuff. There's been sports stories, political stories, deaths, all sorts of crazy stuff. You remember where you were when those things happened. Well, what I can say is that I will forever remember where I was on Wednesday, April 20th, 2021. 22. It was 22. It was like 2 days ago. No, I wasn't having too many 420 celebrations. But where I was when I found out that Jay Wright, who I believe is the best coach in college basketball, or was as of 3 days ago before he retired, decides to step away. Jay Wright, 2 national championships, 4 Final Fours. Funny story. I'm in Vegas with my family. It's not one of the crazy boys Vegas trips. This is with my family. We're out to dinner. Chinese restaurant, very nice Chinese restaurant at the Orleans. Encourage you to check it out. A little bit off the strip, but very good dinner. We're going to the Golden Knights game later. I'm with my mom, I'm with my stepdad, I'm with my wife, I'm with some other people. And I put my phone on silent, and I never put my phone on silent. But on this day, I was like, you know what, I'm with family. Have some respect for mom, have some respect for stepdad. We're here to eat some Chinese food. And so I'm eating. My stepdad looks at his phone. I'm not trying to look at my phone. I'm trying to be respectful of everybody at the table. And he goes, oh, yeah, by the way, puts his phone down about 2 minutes later. Oh, by the way, Aaron, yeah, I think Jay Wright just retired. And I'm like, wait, what? I was like, no. I was like, unless it happened in the last hour, there is no way that is true. Sure enough, pick up my phone. Sure enough, have 5-6 missed text messages. Austin Montgomery, who writes for Aaron Torres Online, texted me. My old radio partner, Arnie Spanier, texted me. A couple listeners of this show either texted or DM'd me. And everything says Jay Wright retired. And I'm like, what the heck just happened? And, of course, my first fear is that it's something related to a scandal or there's a health situation. And so, obviously, I jump right in. And it's very clear that he's just getting older, burned out, tired, this and that. But, I mean, when I say that this Jay Wright decision is an all-time stunner, to me it is just one of the most shocking stories that I can ever remember in major college sports pretty much forever, like since I've been doing this stuff. And here's why. Like, you go through some of these other ones that have happened through the years, I don't think there's been any that is as shocking as this one, right? Roy Williams, 70 plus years old. He's getting older. He's kind of talked to, publicly. He doesn't like the transfer stuff. He doesn't like this. He doesn't like that. When he decides to step away last April 1st, I wasn't really that surprised. Coach K, yeah, it was surprising, but the guy was 74 years old. At some point, he had to step away. You knew it was going to happen. We get the extra year. I enjoyed the Coach K retirement tour because of how it turned out with the Final Four and this and that. But the point is, Coach K, he was 74. Like, even kind of a contemporary younger guy that decided to step away, Bob Stoops. I mean, I remember where I was when Bob Stoops announced his retirement, and it sounded crazy at the time. But I also thought back to all these times where Bob Stoops had talked about the work-family balance, how he was the guy that always made sure that he brought his kids to school in the morning before he went into the office. And so even that one wasn't surprising. But Jay Wright is an all-time stunner because of the fact that I truly believe that he was at the absolute peak of his powers. This wasn't a guy that was on the wrong side of his career. This wasn't a guy that had any scandal. This wasn't a guy that, had any apparent obvious effects of burnout. This guy just made a Final Four 3 weeks ago, and now he is stepping away. And so with that, Jay Wright is out of college basketball, and I'm still in so many ways just absolutely shocked by this news because it's like I said, he was at the absolute peak of his powers, and I think now we'll start to reflect on everything throughout his career. And what I would say is this. Look, I believe he was the best coach in college basketball at the time of his retirement, but I think he also had one of the most fascinating careers really in the history, I think, of college basketball, college sports in general, because here's why. So he really burst on the scene at Villanova, really at about the time that I was at UConn. It's funny, Jay Wright came on this podcast in September. For those of you who are new, he was on in September, right around the lead up to his Hall of Fame induction. And he and I started reminiscing about the early to mid 2000s Big East. I was at UConn. They had Rudy Gay, Josh Boone. He had Randy Foye, Kyle Lowry, guys like that. And his ascent was when I was a young whippersnapper over at UConn having a little too much fun, drinking too much Keystone Light. But it was interesting because first of all, he's the guy that developed he's one of the first guys to really get into the pace and space stuff, played four guards out of necessity, really evolved into who he became. And by the way, I should mention, I plan on rerunning that interview with Jay Wright at some point. Maybe on Monday's show, we'll rerun that interview. But I bring it up because a fascinating career. Bursts on the scene, 2006, I'm at UConn, he's at Villanova. They're the two best teams in the country all year. Now, they both lose in the Elite Eight. UConn loses to George Mason. Villanova loses to Florida. But they emerge as a program on the rise. They got this young coach in his early 40s. We all know the Jay Wright persona, young, handsome, confident, whatever. But what people forget, there were a couple of down years in there. There were a couple of years where it looked like, I don't know if Jay Wright's going to survive this thing. Did this guy have too much too soon? This is the part that everybody forgets. Go back to the early 2010s. 2011, he goes 21-12, tied for 9th in the Big East. 2011-2012, he goes 13-19, 5-13, tied for 13th place in the Big East. 2012-2013, he goes 20-14, 10-8, tied for 7th in the Big East. And then the next year is when things start rolling, 29-5. And here's the crazy part. Since 2014, he has won 7 of the last 9 Big East regular season championships. And oh, by the way, I'm looking right now, by the way, I think it's actually 8 of the last 10. I don't know, 7 of the last 9. Let's just call it 7 of the last 9. The 2 years that he didn't win the Big East, he made the Final Four. 2018, he wins the national championship, and this year he finishes in second, makes the Final Four. So that's how good this guy has been since 2014. But it's easy to forget there were 3 or 4 years there where things were not going well, and to his credit, he completely revamped the program. At that time, in the early 2010s, for people who don't remember, he was kind of trying to recruit the most high-profile players, the best players he could get, guys that weren't really committed to the program. They were trying to be one and done. They were trying to be two and done, and the program completely falls apart. And at that point, he looks himself in the mirror and he says, this is not who I want to be. Saw Jeff Goodman put it out. He did an interview with him all the way back in 2013, 2014. He said, we got to get the culture back. We got to get the right guys in this program, and that's the most incredible part to me. Is you talk about a second act. So we're talking about he gets to Villanova in 2001, 2002. And by 2009, he has made a Final Four, 4 Sweet 16s, and 2 Elite Eights. Then he completely falls off the map. Then he completely rebuilds it into the best program, I would argue, in college basketball. And so why, I don't think there's any other way to put it, why I am so sad to see that Jay Wright's going is because, one, he's at the absolute peak of his powers. Maybe the best coach in college basketball. He was, in my opinion, the best coach prior to his retirement. But then 2, and I think this is important, it's who he built Villanova into. It's the fact that I think he built Villanova into a completely unique program in and of itself, into a program where it wasn't about recruiting 5 stars. It wasn't recruiting about the best players. It was about recruiting fit. It was about recruiting culture, and it was about recruiting players that wanted to be there and wanted to develop and wanted to do things his way. And I talked about this when they made the Final Four. I'm not saying that the Kentucky one-and-done way is wrong. I'm not saying that the Duke one-and-done way is wrong. I'm not saying that, how anybody does it is wrong, frankly. Everybody's got their own model, and it's worked for other people. It's like Jay Wright's the only guy that's had success. But it was so different because he literally, and we talked about this prior to the Final Four, he has literally turned recruits away, like really good recruits that ended up at really good schools. Because they told him on a recruiting visit, I want to be a one-and-done. I want to be a two-and-done. And what he said is, that's not what we do here. Now, we'll put guys into the league after a year or 2. Sadiq Bey went to the league after 2 years. Josh Hart went after a couple years. Dante DiVincenzo left early. Amari Spellman left early. On and on. But that's not how we do it here. You come here, you get better here, you learn here, and when it's time to go, you go. But we don't put a label on you. We don't call you a one-and-done. We don't call you a two-and-done. We don't call you a 4-year player. We let you develop at your own pace, get ready at your own pace, prepare at your own pace, And at some point when you're ready, you go, whether it's after 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And so that's why I'm so sad, because they were seemingly the one program that in this new world of college basketball, NIL, transfer portal, they were the one program that I don't want to say they were above it all, because that makes it sound like the other way to do it is wrong. But they were old school, and they did it their way, and it wasn't just about 5 stars. And it wasn't just about rushing to the NBA. It was about doing it the Villanova way. Coming in, playing at your own pace, maturing at your own pace. Maybe you don't start. Maybe you don't come off the bench. Whatever it is. And so with Jay Wright leaving, I do believe like a part of college basketball kind of died on Wednesday. And that sounds sad and morbid, but I really believe it. And we'll talk about Kyle Neptune in a minute, the new head coach. He's going to try to keep that thing going, but there's no way he's going to be able to keep it going like Jay Wright, a Hall of Famer, did. Because he's not Jay Wright. He's not a Hall of Famer. He doesn't have the cachet with his current players that he's going to inherit, the ones that don't hit the transfer portal, recruits, young players, whatever. And so to me, it feels like a part of college basketball died. Because Villanova was the one place where kids didn't just transfer after 1 year. Kids didn't come in expecting to be one and done, and if it didn't work out, they bounced. They stayed, they got better, they developed, and if you watch Villanova, I mean, it's just, to me, it was my favorite team to watch because the way they played, ball fakes, pump fakes, movement, passing, spacing. I tweeted out a video at the Final Four that went super viral. Everybody else goes to these Final Four open practices in front of the fans, and they're taking half-court shots and dunk contests. Villanova's working on pump fakes and dribble drive and jump stops, and there's just nobody else like them. And so for Jay Wright to be gone, the guy that built that, it's a sad day for college basketball, at least in my opinion, it really is. And I think it speaks to something else that absolutely needs to be addressed. I don't know that the transfer portal and NIL and the way college sports is changing is the sole reason that Jay Wright decided to leave. He was burned out. By the way, I didn't even mention, but he just basically said he's burned out. He's tired. He worked with Team USA, all that good stuff. He's been doing it forever. But you can't say that NIL and the transfer portal had nothing to do with it either. And it's really interesting, right? Because when I saw the news, that was my initial reaction. This is another example of a guy with options, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, that is deciding, I don't want to be a part of the current college sports landscape. And whenever I say that, people get mad. And what I will also say, for those of you like me who are forever going to love college sports no matter what, no matter how many iterations there are, to be clear, this isn't the end of college basketball. It isn't the end of college football. The sports will still go on. When Alabama plays football, there's going to be 100,000 people in the stadium. Same with Ohio State. Same with Michigan. Same with Texas A&M. Kentucky basketball is always going to sell out Rupp Arena. Same with Indiana. Same with UCLA. Same with UConn, with whatever. I always say, as long as Duke basketball exists as a basketball program, and if they're going to pay the way that they pay, somebody's going to want to coach them. And it's the same with Ohio State football. And it's the same with Michigan football. And it's the same with UConn basketball. And it's the same with Kentucky basketball. And it's the same with Arkansas basketball. But at the same time, what I will also say is what I have been right about and what I have been adamant about for a year and a half, even before the one-time transfer and NIL came into place. I said the guys with options, they're not going to stick around for 40 years like Coach K did. They're not going to stick around for 40 years like Roy Williams did. Jim Boeheim, he's an entity unto himself because I don't even think he cares about coaching anymore. He just wants something to do to pass the time. I think he's afraid to sit at home for too long. But the guys with options, they're going to look to something else. If they're young and they make their money and they can get out like Jay Wright at 60 and have 25, 30 years ahead of them, a lot of them are going to do it. I don't think it's going to be uncommon to see coaches in their 50s and 60s who have made their money say, you know what, I'm good. I don't want to deal with this. And it's the same with, by the way, it's not just college basketball, college football. Chris Peterson, the Washington coach, stepped aside in his mid-50s. Bob Stoops stepped aside in his mid-50s. Neither of them has seemed to have any interest to come back to college football. Bob Stoops is coaching in the USFL, I believe, or the XFL, one of the two. But in terms of college, if he was ever going to get hired, this felt like the year it was going to happen. Oklahoma opens up, Notre Dame opens up, Florida opens up. Those were like the three jobs that if Bob Stoops ever came back to college football, those were the ones he would take. All three opened in the same year, and he didn't take one of them. He didn't seem to have any interest in any of them. And so if you're a guy in your 50s and your 60s and you made your money, you're going to get out. The Coach K's are gone. The Roy Williams are gone. The Jim Calhouns are gone. Nick Sabans are gone. I don't think we're going to see another Nick Saban. And then on top of that, I think we're going to see the guys that if they're younger and they want to keep going, I think they're going to look to the pros as a legitimate option. And I've been talking about this since day one. But in college sports, you got to deal with the transfer portal, which is essentially free agency not only every single year, but every single day of every single year. Kid can enter the transfer portal any day of any year. He has 2 bad practices, he can leave. He gets word from another school that they're interested, he can leave. Now, he's not eligible right away, but he can leave anytime he wants. And so you're constantly re-recruiting your players. With NIL, I can tell you it is a conversation already in every recruit that is being recruited. That is a conversation. Now, it might not be the same at UMass as it is at UConn, or it's not the same at Rhode Island as it is at Kentucky. But every single, we're going to talk about Shaden Sharp later. Every single handler, every single AAU guy, every single basketball guy, every single 7-on-7 guy in football, they're asking, what are you going to do for us off the field? Forget your chemistry program. Forget your biology program. What are you going to do for us off the field? I told this story a few days ago. I know of one very, very, very big college basketball coach, a guy that you would know. I know for a fact he was on a Zoom with some of his biggest boosters in the last month saying, if you guys don't get an NIL plan together, we're going to fall way behind, and you want to compete for championships, it ain't going to happen here if you don't get your act together. And so why I bring it up, I tweeted that out. NIL and name, image, likeness, and the transfer portal are part of it. People went crazy. I can tell you for a fact, I had probably a dozen people across college sports. I had big-time administrators reach out to me, say I was right. I had big-time head coaches, assistant ADs reach out. Tell me, you're right, Torres. This cannot stay the way that it is. And I'm not saying by any stretch that NIL is bad for college sports and that the one-time transfer is bad for sports. I'm not saying that at all. We're going to talk about Oscar Tshiebwe in a minute. Oscar Tshiebwe is a great example of how great NIL can be in college sports. That guy came to Kentucky, earned a spot on the floor, became an All-American, made money for the school. He should make as much money as he possibly can on campus. But when we now have bidding wars already for unproven high school players, when we have the transfer portal, nobody's against the transfer portal. But at the same time, even in professional sports, there's no sport on the planet, there's no professional league on the planet where every single player is a free agent, not only every year, but every day of every year. And so if you think about you're somebody like Jay Wright, you're 60 years old. You've made more money than you can ever spend. You've won 2 championships. Your legacy is set. You're in the Hall of Fame. What are you coming back for? To recruit some 16-year-olds and their parents that are asking about NIL when they're averaging 11 points on their high school team? Then, oh, by the way, you got to re-recruit your entire team. It's February, and there's a guy on the back of the bench that isn't playing as much as he wants. You got to convince him why he should stay to play for you, Jay Wright, the 2-time national champion? Yeah, I wouldn't want to put up with that crap either. I wouldn't want to put up with that crap either. And so I do think that we are at a very, very precocious, important moment in time. I said it with Mark Emmert 2-3 times over the last couple weeks. You don't have to have answers to everything, but you have to have answers to something. And there's another time and place. I've already gone through how I would fix the transfer portal, how I would fix NIL. With the transfer portal, there should be 2 distinct windows. One around Christmas time after the first semester, one in the second semester after spring practice is done, after the college basketball season is done. But you can't have coaches on the clock 3. And that's the other part with Jay Wright. People are, I don't feel bad for a guy making $4 million a year. What about his assistants that are making nothing? What about his ops guy? What about his video coordinator that's probably making $40,000 a year that's away from his wife in the middle of June because some transfer wants to take a visit and he's got to put together a highlight tape for Jay Wright? I mean, wives and families and kids, they understand you're going to be gone in November, December, January, February, March. But now all of a sudden you're in the office till 9, 10 o'clock at night in June and May because of the transfer portal, because of recruiting? Come on now. And so that's where the frustration is with college sports. It's a 365-day-a-year thing. And I'm telling you, I've heard of a lot of people who are deciding to step away or are thinking about stepping away or are thinking about other careers because they're just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be away from my family 365 days a year, and that's the new norm. And so I don't mean to belabor the point, but it is an important point. And why would Jay Wright want to deal with this? And so I'm sad to see him go, because I believe even 4 or 5 years ago, if the climate was a little bit different, maybe he'd consider staying. Now, my understanding is Villanova tried really hard to convince him, and I do think part of it was unfortunate because it was a weird year where not only did NIL come into place, not only did the one-time transfer come into place, but he also coached Team USA basketball last summer in the Olympics, late July, early August, whatever. He gets back, immediately goes into the Hall of Fame, then immediately has to start the season ahead. And maybe under different circumstances, maybe he considers staying for a little bit longer. But you can't sit here and tell me that NIL and all this other stuff didn't play a role in it. It's just sad to see somebody so talented, somebody so good for our sport, decide to step away when he has so many good years left. This guy could have kept it going for, at minimum, another 6, 7, 8 years. If not 10, if not 12, if not 15. Coach K just made a Final Four at 74. Jay Wright couldn't have kept this going for 10 years, 60 years old. Come on now. Now, in terms of everything else, I'll just wrap with a couple other things. First of all, a lot of you have actually asked me, the new head coach, Kyle Neptune. I'll be real. I really don't know a ton about him. I will tell you, I knew somebody at Fordham this year, and he raved about Kyle Neptune. He had not come from the Villanova coaching tree. And he raved about Kyle Neptune, about how he had a lot of the great characteristics from Villanova. And to Fordham's credit, I mean, they really, really, really improved. 16-16 overall. I believe that was they had a 14-win improvement, so they went 2 and whatever the year before. 16 wins this year, Kyle Neptune's first year as a head coach. And my buddy that was there was like, all that stuff that you see at Villanova, that's not by accident. They teach that, and I do think that a lot of the principles and how things were run, it's going to be very similar to Jay Wright, and I think that's why Jay Wright wanted this guy. He had been a long-time assistant up until last season. 1 year as a head coach was actually pretty good, and the players on the current roster know him. A lot of the recruits were probably recruited by him at some point, and there should be some sense of continuity. But, man, it's just sad to see this guy go. We'll see about Kyle Neptune. Maybe there's another conversation down the road about that. Finally, let me just say this. I don't claim to, know any of these guys and girls in the sports that I cover. Some of them, when I say no, like, oh, I know him, I'm going to vouch for him. Like, that's a salt-of-the-earth guy. Because we've learned through the years, a lot of scandals. There's a lot of these guys that we think are great. They got some skeletons in their closet just like we all do, myself included, you included. Everybody listening has some sort of skeleton in their closet they're not proud of, things that they did in their past, things that whatever. So I don't claim to know any of these guys, but what I would say is this. One thing I want to get across, why I'm also sad, Jay Wright was also, by all accounts, not just by all accounts, but my personal accounts, a really good guy. Twice I had a chance to interview him one-on-one. Once was in probably about 2015, 2016. All the Big East coaches rolled through LA Fox because Fox has the Big East package. You get them all in a room. You kind of go around the room. You ask them a couple different questions. You grab them one by one. They're available at different times. And I'm not going to name names, but some of the guys were really nice. Some of the guys were really friendly. They're talking. They're they're chatting, whatever, because it's a loose, informal setting. There were also a couple that couldn't have been bothered to have talked to me, and I was much younger, and I'm not saying I'm anybody important now, but I was certainly nobody back then. And out of all the guys in that room, all the coaches in the Big East, Jay Wright was up there about as nice as you could possibly. Oh, where are you from? You went to UConn? What years were you there? Oh, I remember those teams. I remember these teams, this, that, the other thing. So you just talk about a nice, salt-of-the-earth guy. And then this past year, like I said, I had him on the podcast back in September in the lead up to his Hall of Fame induction. And like I said a minute ago, he had about a week between when he got back from Japan, and keep in mind, this was for the Team USA Olympics, when he got back from Japan, and not only the Olympics, but remember, those Olympics were crazy. Those were COVID Olympics, couldn't leave the room, couldn't do anything, and he was basically in isolation, from my understanding, for like 40 days, 45 days, where basically if he wasn't at the gym at practice or a game, he was alone, away from his family, halfway across the world. And he talked about how exhausting it was, and I don't know what he said exactly. What we're going to do is we're going to replay that interview, but I know that it was very exhausting for him. And he comes back, and like I said, he's got about 2 or 3 days before the Hall of Fame. Then he's immediately getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Then he immediately starts his season. And not only did he make time for the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, but he was great. Answered all my questions. We laughed. We joked. We this. We that. And somebody asked me the other day, they go, is he as nice as he seems? And what I would say is this. Some of these guys are real nice. Some of them aren't. If this guy isn't as nice as he seems, he is the greatest faker in the world because he was just so genuine and so sincere and so thoughtful in all of his answers and all of his time. And again, one, he didn't have to make time for me, certainly, but certainly didn't have to make time after 40 days in Japan, 2 or 3 days before the Hall of Fame induction. Guy was just incredible. And so I don't want that to be lost in this because there's bigger picture issues to talk about, college basketball and the future of Villanova and the future of the Big East. I don't want it to get lost that this guy, he's a really nice guy from every interaction. I'm not the only one that said that, by the way. I've talked to other people in the media who have nothing but nice things to say about Jay Wright. But Jay Wright, 60 years old, decides that he wants to leave college basketball. The NIL stuff I obviously just spent a ton of time talking about, and it was a big topic in college sports on Thursday and Wednesday night. But I'll just tell you this, man. I'm just sad because when you have somebody at the height of their powers, I mean, it'd be like, Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow just deciding in the peak of his career, I'm just going to step away. I don't want to play anymore. It's like, what? That's where we were with Jay Wright. I believe he was the best coach in college basketball. If I had to vote best coach in college basketball, he would have been it. And I think it's a sad day, man. I think it's a sad day because, like I said, I do think that a part of college basketball died. And Villanova, look, they're going to be good. Kyle Neptune inherits a good situation. The Big East, by the way, is getting better with Shaheen Holloway, Sean Miller, and Thad Matta coming in. UConn, I like the roster that they've put together. We'll talk about some of their transfer stuff on Monday's show. But you just talk about, I'm just sad, man. I'm just sad that Jay Wright is gone. But Jay Wright's gone. He's still going to be around. But he obviously retires from coaching in the peak of his career. Not a good day for college sports, and just a sad day if you love it. But if he really just does want to spend more time with his family, if he really just does want to travel and do the things that he hasn't been able to do throughout his early part of his life, then good for him, and I wish him nothing but the best. All right, so what I want to do, I want to take a quick break. I do want to come back. I do want to do some of the positives of college hoops. Oscar Tshiebwe coming back. Some other big news and notes from throughout the last couple days in college hoops. Who's coming back, who's staying, who's going. We're going to talk about all that next. I'll be right back.